Ladies, gentlemen, and sword and shield users of all ages, Title Update 3 is here, and we've got some fantastic stuff going on in the world of swords and shields. We got a new weapon within this title update, one of the only 3 weapon types that actually did, though its actual usefulness is pretty questionable. We got new armor pieces to stick into our sets, and essentially a whole new build variety to start talking about now because of the specificness of the new set bonus, and today we're going to dive into all of it, along with an updated and upgraded support set for Title Update 3, as we haven't talked about the support sword and shield build for a while, and there is unlikely to be a more relevant time for a support build than right now. And before you write it off, the support sword and shield build that we can currently have exist in the game does a lot of damage, and well, put simply, 554 heals or buffs applied leads to a 0 cart, 22-minute kill on Savage Omega. So do not knock support sword and shield until you see what we're rocking with in that section. That said, there will be 4 main builds today. The best standard build for playing solo if you want to just min-max your offensive power when playing by yourself. The best build for solo if you want to use the Counterstrike skill, as there is a lot of debate about how good Counterstrike is or isn't. Essentially, it boils down to if you either dodge or block every attack, then Counterstrike is useless for sword and shield, but if you get hit every 90 seconds or so on average, then the Counter-Strike version comes out on top. So we will go over both builds and you can choose which one is better for you personally. Then we'll have our third build, which will be our pure offensive focused multiplayer build. Similar idea to the first set, except that it hits higher numbers due to the resonance set bonus on Omega armor, but that set bonus only exists if there are other hunters on the quest to position yourself around. So it is a multiplayer specific meta offense build. Then the final build today will be the support sword and shield setup as it stands right now in Title Update 3. And while the original support build was pretty solid, I'm extremely happy with how much offense we can now fit into support builds and how effective the actual raw damage output is, despite fitting in all of the support skills that you could really ask for as well, which makes it absolutely fantastic for a quest like Savage Omega. Before we dive into the builds themselves, then let's talk about the weapons. The best sword and shield still to this day are the Artian weapons. The best Artian weapon to use is the one that matches your target monster's weakness. In the case of Omega, that would mean a thunder sword and shield, and then having a fire sword and shield that you can swap to for the Nursilla clone rush part of phase 3. Just to give a couple of examples. On the Artian sword and shield, you want to use 3 attack parts when creating it for the ideal results, and for the reinforcement bonuses, the ideal set of rolls is 3 attack boosts and 2 sharpness boosts. You can technically manage with only 1 sharpness boost and an extra attack instead, but the gain in offense from doing that is minor compared to the comfortability loss of more sharpness, so I prefer 2 sharpness rolls, and sword and shield is probably the biggest sharpness guzzling weapon out there, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive. There are faster weapons, but most of the weapons that are faster than sword and shield also have a lot more reduced sharpness cost on their actual quick attacks. The other weapon worth mentioning today then is the Omega sword and shield as well. This is the new weapon that we have for sword and shield, and it isn't statistically that bad, but it has no element on it, which just makes it weaker than Artian by default. It has less slots, which also makes it weaker than an Artian weapon. The sharpness on it is a great amount, and the skill itself gives 30 defense to all allies around you when you perform perfect guard, lasting for 30 seconds. Because of how frequently we can perfect guard, you can pretty much keep that up to just permanently, and this buff of course does nothing for offense, so it does make the weapon fall behind Artian in any effective raw damage type calculations, and while it does boost defense for everyone, the amount is fairly small. 30 defense doesn't mean a whole lot when we have like 450 on our actual armor sets already, and before you suggest, maybe not using it with a min-max set, you have to kill Savage Omega to be able to craft this. So overall, I would say just use Artian Sword and Shield. You can use this if you really want to lean into feeling like a support for whatever reason, past the actual support build, not even requiring this. It is worse than an Artian Sword and Shield, but it's not so much worse that you're like throwing or anything by using it. As well, we should have a quick chat about talismans. I will be presenting the builds today with the perfect talisman for them, also known as the God Roll talismans, but every one of these is only a minor change to actually swap in the build for a crafted talisman instead if you just don't have the God Roll available. The difference will be less than 5% in each case, so God Roll talismans are nice, and I'll be mathing out the perfect version of each build, but even if you are only working with crafted talismans, the builds are still extremely potent, and in our specific case, they don't really require any armor swaps either. First up then for our builds is the best highest DPS build while playing in solo without any Counterstrike in it. For those with a sharp eye, you'll notice that this is exactly the same as it was before Title Update 3. This specific build has not changed, so if you already had this one, congratulations, it's the same. But the other 3 builds are new and different. That said, with this one here, meaning that we've already gone through and talked about it in videos in the past, I will go a bit quicker for this section. For the actual armor, we've got Raidao Gamma Helmet, Gloves and Waist, we've got Xochitl Beta Chest, and Legiacris Beta Legs. The main thing that we get from this combination of armor, outside of the raw skills and slots on the armor itself, is a Lord Soul group bonus. This does quite a few things. By default, it gives us 5% increased damage and 5% decreased defense. It also gives us Guts, which can prevent one cart. If the Guts effect triggers, you lose the attack buff and get 5% defense instead, and if you die, this fully resets. For the talisman on this one specifically, you are looking for ideally a rarity 8 talisman specifically, with 3 ranks of offensive guard and 1 rank of either agitator, weakness exploit, or burst. You can also manage with one that has Master's Touch or Razor Sharp in the first slot instead of offensive guard for a minimal loss, and technically speaking, having 3 attack instead would also work reasonably well there. It just would mean that we'd lose some crit boost, so it's the least ideal of the technical god roll options. If you don't have any of those options available, you are most likely best off with a crafted talisman. The crafted talisman that fits the best for this build would be the Agitator Charm, which would just straight up bump you up to 5 Agitator in the setup, which is actually not that huge of a loss over having the god roll talisman with 4 Agitator. For the mantle then, Corrupted Mantle is technically the best for the sake of just pure offensive increases, but I have a personal very soft spot for Rocksteady, especially for the sake of really difficult hunts, and especially with it having a 60% damage reduction effect while it is active in wilds right now. There are some attacks that will attack you multiple times while you're wearing this, and for those it can be a detriment, but for the most part it does just make you a lot tankier. For your decorations then, the exact configuration in your weapon will depend on your exact talisman, but the goal is between your talisman and the weapon sockets to end up with 3 offensive guard, 5 critical boost, and some sort of sharpness management skill. The best option for a sharpness management skill is Master's Touch, because we just have a lot of affinity, which means that this triggers very frequently. Razor Sharp as a sharpness skill would also be fine if you don't have Master's Touch. If you have the attack boost version of this talisman instead, or if you're using the crafted Agitator talisman, you would have to swap out this 2 crit boost decoration and fit the offensive guard in there instead, as the offensive guard is the most important option. For armor decorations, the goal mainly is to just fill up weakness exploit as the highest priority, so 2 weakness exploit decorations in my setup. Then we want 1 rank of burst also in here, as well as the first rank of burst is the most valuable part of that skill. We use our remaining 3 slot for 1 rank of the Agitator skill, which puts that up to level 4. Then we just have 1 slots remaining in the build. The 1 slot attack decoration that I have in the talisman is mostly just a placeholder. We get 3 attack from this, which is always good by default on any hunt, but situationally you might instead want something like a guard up decoration to block super attacks from the few monsters that have those, or element attack up if the monster that you're fighting is particularly weak to element. For the armor skill 1 slots in the build then, whatever utility or defense options you prefer are for the most part really. For the full skill list on this build then, 5 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 attack boost, Master's Touch, 5 weakness exploit, 4 agitator, 3 latent power, 3 maximum might, 3 divine blessing, which is from my 1 slot sockets, 2 evade extender, 1 burst, 1 stamina surge, and then Raidao 2 set for longer latent power duration, and the Lord Soul group bonus on top. For the math on this set then, our weapon starts with 220 attack. Lord Soul gives us a bonus to our attack, which is 5% of our weapon's attack added on, meaning that it does not stack with the other attack buffs. It is a percentage of the attack listed on the weapon itself. 5% of 220 is 11 bonus attack. Offensive guard works similarly when it's active, so 15% of base weapon attack. With sword and shield, you can easily keep full uptime on this for the vast majority of hunts, so we count that full 15%, which is 33 bonus attack. We gain 3 attack from attack boost rank 1, agitator rank 4 is 16 bonus attack while it's active, but it's only active when the monster is enraged, so we estimate an uptime of around 65%, which means average attack increase from this of 10.4. We also have 1 rank of burst. We will always have the first hit bonus active from this skill, which is 5 bonus raw, and we will very often have the full 8 attack bonus active too because of our movement and our attack speed, and so we'll be counting this as the full 8 raw for a total raw of 285.4. For our affinity, 5% base on the weapon, 30% from 5 ranks of weakness exploit, 6.5% for 4 ranks of agitator at 65% uptime, 3 ranks of latent power would be 30% affinity while it's active. We estimate around a 66% uptime with Raidao 2 set bonus for latent power, so we'll call that an average of 19.8% affinity increase. Then another 30% for maximum might as well on top of that. This brings us to a total of 91.3% affinity. We have full critical boost, which means a critical hit is a 40% damage boost. 91.3% chance of a 40% increase is an average average damage bonus of 36.5%. Apply that to our raw attack total and you get 389.6, increase that by another 32% for the white sharpness modifier, and we get 514.3 effective raw, an extremely respectable number, still higher than what most weapons' best sets can reach now, even the ones that have seen upgrades in Title Update 3. Next up then we have the Counterstrike variation of the best solo set. This one has changed in Title Update 3 and now uses a piece of Omega armor. The full armor set is Raidao Gamma Helm, chest and waist, then Omega arms, and Shia Beta legs. This achieves the Lord Soul group bonus just like the previous set, but a different collection of skills around it. As for the talisman, the god roll on this one is a much more particular one due to the actual sort of rolls required on the armor set and the skills that we have, but it is 3 offensive guard with 1 rank of weakness exploit. Again, the offensive guard is interchangeable with sharpness management or with attack boost for a slightly worse version, but agitator or burst do not fit as a secondary skill in this specific build because the weakness exploit on our talisman is the only way that we fit full weakness exploit in the build. That said, if you do not have a talisman like this one specifically, the next best option would be to use the crafted talismans, the best crafted talisman for this set being weakness exploit rank 2. With this you could remove one of our weakness exploit decorations from the armor itself and add in 1 rank of burst, which is not that much of a loss, only a couple of percent overall in the end, because burst rank 1 is super valuable and we just have no logical way of fitting it in this set beforehand without lowering the damage, so it's not a bad swap if you have to do it by any means. The weapon then is the same as the first build, Artian sword and shield. The weapon decorations are the same as well, same goals. You want to hit a combination of full offensive guard, some sort of sharpness management skill, and then crit boost between your talisman and your weapon sockets. For the armor, we have 3 tenderizer decorations in here to hit weakness exploit rank 5. We've got 2 counter decorations in here as well to hit Counterstrike rank 3 as the whole point of this sort of variant build, and we get 1 empty 1 slot for our armor 2, and then you may have some more in the talisman as well. The full skill list on this then is 5 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 attack boost, which again you can swap out for whatever single slot weapon skill is the most value to you in that specific moment, master's touch, 5 weakness exploit, 5 latent power, 3 counterstrike, 3 maximum might, 3 divine blessing, 2 of which are from my decoration choices, 1 agitator, 1 recovery speed, 1 stamina surge, 1 elemental absorption as a little bonus cherry on top to your actual elemental damage, and then Raidao 2 set and the Lord Soul group bonus 2. For the math on this one then, we'll try to blast by it a bit quicker as you've already seen how I calculate my stuff, but with the one addition that I should mention, I am counting Counterstrike as a skill at 50% uptime. Sword and Shield has no way to manually activate Counterstrike like an offset or something like that, so you have to fully take an unblocked hit from the monster to activate it. 50% uptime on the skill would mean being hit every 90 seconds, and while that does not apply to everyone, I think the vast majority of players, if we're being realistic and honest with ourselves, probably do get hit by monsters once every minute and a half. That said, for this build we hit 282.1 raw attack. For affinity we have a much more impressive result as we total up to 99.95% affinity on average, just under 100%. Combined with full ranks of crit boost, this gives us a 39.98% damage increase applied to the raw that hits 394.9, another 32% increase for white sharpness modifier, and you hit 521.25. To be clear, this is around a 1.5% increase over the set that doesn't use Counterstrike, but that's also counting Counterstrike at only 50% uptime, which I think it would probably be higher for the average player, but obviously also lower than that if you are really good at just not getting hit in general. So overall, the difference between these two sets is fairly negligible, but which one you choose for yourself just requires a little bit of self-reflection and understanding of how you actually do on hunts. That said, the other builds today will not be using Counterstrike at all, just to make it a little bit simpler. Next up then we have our best offensive set for multiplayer without going into full support mode. This means it's the best offensive set because it requires multiplayer and it uses Omega 2 set bonus. The actual armor pieces for this one are going to be Omega helmet and gloves, Raidao Gamma chest and waist, and then Duna Gamma legs. This together gives the same group and set bonus as the 2 previous builds, but then also the resonant set bonus, the 2 set bonus for Omega. What this does is give you 2 different effects, local and remote resonance. When you start the quest, the game will choose one of the 2 buffs at random random, and it will swap back and forth between them every 90 seconds. Local resonance gives you 20% bonus affinity when you are close to other hunters during its uptime. Remote resonance gives you 10 bonus raw attack when you are far away from other hunters during its uptime. Local resonance is very easy to keep active when that's the chosen buff, whereas remote resonance is much tougher, so the uptime that we use for them in the math is going to reflect that, but this is very powerful as an effect when it works, and even just the affinity part itself is very solid. As for the talisman that we use on this build, the god roll is going to be a rarity 8 with 3 offensive guard, and then either agitator or burst in the other skill slot, just not weakness exploit specifically. But those two are fairly interchangeable, and as usual, the offensive guard could be swapped for a sharpness management skill with minimal losses. It could even be attack for a slightly less good but still incredible talisman. If you don't have any of those as an option, the best crafted talisman option for this is the agitator crafted talisman, and if you did that, you just have to swap out one of my agitator decorations for a weakness exploit decoration instead, and you would move the offensive guard into the weapon itself up here. That said, for decorations on this one, the weapon is the same as usual. Your priority is offensive guard, then some sort of sharpness skill, then as much crit boost as you can fit around it. For armor decorations, you want 1 burst decoration so you can get the first rank burst, as that is the most valuable rank. Then you want to use your other level 3 slot sockets for agitator to finish it off for maximum ranks, and if you have any more 3 slots due to talisman difference, you would put tenderizer in those for a bit of extra weakness exploit. For the 2 slots in this, we want 1 mighty jewel to finish off maximum might, and then we have 1 extra bonus 2 slot socket in the build as well. If you think that you get hit frequently enough, then this can work as 1 rank of Counterstrike, but I've got stamina surge in here, which is simultaneously good for defense because it lets us block attacks more often and safely, but also good for offense as it helps a lot with maximum might uptime, which is a ton of affinity when it's active. Then we just have a pile of 1 slot sockets in here too that you can do whatever you want with for defense or utility. Talisman sockets are the exact same as previous builds. I have 1 attack boost in here as sort of a placeholder, but you can change that to being guard up or element attack depending on the monster. The full skill list for this one then is 5 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 attack boost, master's touch, 5 agitator, 5 latent power, 3 maximum might, 3 divine blessing, 1 of those from a socket, 3 recovery up, all from sockets, 3 quick sheath, 1 weakness exploit, 1 burst, 1 stamina surge, and then the Raid Out 2 set, Omega 2 set, and the Lord Soul group bonus as well. For the math then, today we will go through this relatively quickly. The only new thing to cover in this one is how we calculate the resonance bonus. Remote resonance is the one that affects attack. Each resonant state is 50% active time by default. During that, we are assuming at most a 60% uptime for the attack buff, as it is much harder to stay away from other hunters while still hitting meaningful body parts. Overall, this makes it an average of 3 attack gain throughout the hunt as a whole, so even if you disagree and you think it should be lower uptime than that, the most difference we are talking here is like 1 or 2 attack lower on the whole. That said, in total we hit 291 attack in this build. For affinity, the only new thing is again resonance. Local resonance is 20% affinity while active. Local resonance mode is active for half of the hunt. We assume that it is very easy to keep this active because usually all players like to hit the same weak part of the monster, so we count this as 90% uptime during that 50% possible open time, for a total average uptime of 45% on the affinity boost specifically. This is an average affinity increase of 9%, so that's a lot of words to get to that point, but I know some people like having the full explanation on this stuff. This puts us at a total affinity of 91.75% with full critical boost. This is an average damage increase from crits of 36.7%. Apply that to our total raw and you get 397.8, increase that by a further 32% for the white sharpness multiplier, and you get 525.09 effective raw. That means that in total this one is slightly less than 1% more effective than the solo set that has Counterstrike, and around 2.5% more effective than the solo set that does not have Counterstrike. So in the end, the gains from this isn't like massive for the sake of having more builds, but hey, what do we hunt monsters for if not to make cool things from their various body parts? So if you have the parts, you might as well put it together. Finally then, we have the build that I think is a sleeper hit right now, which is support build Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield is uniquely good at support in general because you can consume items without having to sheathe your weapon, because you can consume them by pressing the block button and then interacting with the item. The majority of your attack animations also have very little commitment required, meaning if somebody gets hurt and is in a poor spot, you can then very quickly stop attacking yourself, pop a potion with wide range, heal them for minimal downtime before they potentially cart. But you can take this so much further with Savage Omega, showing people that he's got a hands. There's no better time to consider a support playstyle than right now, and to be clear, what I mean by support playstyle isn't that you will do no damage and spend the whole time healing and buffing, it's that we are going to build for as much damage as physically possible while still hitting the core requirements of a support build, to the point where the actual damage output isn't that much lower than a standard build, and count in the fact that you can spam eat might pills with wide range to apply just might pills to people constantly, also having free meals so you aren't even consuming them every time, and arguably it becomes even higher damage output for the group as a whole if you keep that up relatively consistently. All that to say, do not underestimate the support build just because it's got the word support in the name. Look at the results, maybe give it a shot for yourself, and as an extra note of fun for this is not improved by Omega armor at all, which means that you can fully make this Savage Omega countering support build before you've defeated Savage Omega. All that said, let's break it down. Radau, Gamma, Helm, and Gloves, with Duna, Gamma, Legs, Legiacris, Beta, Chest, and Waist. This gives us Radau 2-set bonus and Lord Soul again, but it also gets us the Legiacris 2-set bonus here too, which we haven't had up to this point. This lets you apply a little bonus pop of thunder damage on an attack once every 50 seconds. When this procs, you gain 15% affinity for 20 seconds, and because of how that works, we will be counting the affinity from this buff as 40% uptime in the actual math, but the actual thunder pops are a bit harder to quantify. For the talisman on this setup then, this is the most unique one that we'll be using today. It is 3 offensive guard and 4 wide range if you have that perfect ideal god roll. The armor skill sockets on this matter much more for this one than for the other builds as well. That said, you can get this combo as a rarity 7 talisman too without having the weapon decoration slot, and it would still be 99% as good for the purposes of most situations. So it may seem like this is a very specific role, but it has a bit more leeway than it looks, and again, the offensive guard on this is pretty interchangeable with a couple of other skills too. That said, if you do not have any sort of talisman like this, the best choice would be the crafted wide range talisman, which can give you 5 ranks of wide range just straight up. And you would just have to lose 2 crit boost if you do that, which is a bit of a heftier damage loss, but it's not the end of the world by any means to do so. Inside of the weapon itself, we have the same priorities as normal. Offensive guard, then a sharpness management skill, and then also critical boost. Armor is where things are going to flip a bit. We have 1 burst decoration just to get that first rank of burst, as it's very valuable. We have 1 challenger decoration just to get us 1 extra rank of agitator, as that is also quite valuable offensively. Then we also have 2 tenderizer decorations to finish weakness exploit up to the full 5 ranks, which is very nice to have. We have 1 maximum might decoration in here to bring that up to 3 ranks too. Then pretty much every other thing in here is for supporting our allies. 3 ranks of the free meal skill here from the satiated decorations. This gives you a chance to not consume an item when you consume it, which just makes you able to support much more effectively, especially with things like might pills. Then you want to finish off the last rank of wide range as well if you're using the god roll talisman that has 4 ranks. The crafted talisman doesn't have to do that. Then you will be able to either fit 2 ranks of speed eating or 3 ranks of speed eating in here as well, depending on your actual talisman, because it changes up the way that the sockets work, but 2 ranks is okay, 3 ranks is fantastic. We also get to fit 1 rank of Mushroomancer in here, which lets you eat blue mushrooms as if they were potions, just to give you an even greater supply of items that you can consume super quickly for healing your allies, and you also do eat these faster than you drink a regular potion. Then we have 1 extra 2-slot socket in the build. This will not be spare, it won't be extra if you do not have the god roll talisman and you're using the crafted version, but if you do have the god roll, then I personally really like 1 rank of stamina surge in here. Again, stamina surge lets us guard more frequently, it lets us have higher uptime on maximum might, but it also just makes it a little bit easier to sprint around applying buffs or heals to teammates when necessary as well. The full skill list for this one then is 5 critical boost, 3 offensive guard, 1 attack boost, 1 master's touch, 5 weakness exploit, 5 wide range, 3 maximum might, 3 stamina surge, 3 quick sheath, 3 speed eating, 3 free meal, 2 agitator, 2 evade extender, 1 burst, 1 mushroomancer, and then Radau 2-set, Legiacris 2-set, and of course the Lord Soul group bonus as well. The math for this set again we will go through relatively quickly, nothing fully new to talk about here, so the full total raw is 280.2. The total affinity that we hit, including Legiacris 2-set, is 74.25% on average, with full crit boost that is a 29.7 average damage increase. Apply that to the raw attack and we go up to 363.4, increased by a further 32%, and we hit 479.7 effective raw. For some perspective, this is around a 9% drop from the ultra damage focused multiplayer set we just went over. It's around a 7% drop from the pure solo set, so it is a damage decrease from those, but again the difference here is that you can quite consistently apply might pills to to the whole squad, not just yourself, but all 4 hunters for as long as you have the supplies in your item box to do so. Free meal lets you use these pretty frequently, pretty much on the duration timer for a whole zone before you would need to restock. Restock between areas, and then you can repeat this pretty constantly. Not to mention all the other parts of the support that you can add in too, like using an adamant pill right before a big dangerous attack to keep someone alive that might otherwise die. The more simple stuff like applying general damage and defense buffs just every few minutes because they last a while, or the obvious one like just popping a heal anytime that someone gets hit. Your job when playing the support playstyle is not to focus entirely on support. You aren't trying to make the other hunters forget that they have healing options in general. Your job is to do damage, and then in the moments between your damage windows where you would have to stop hitting, or during particularly dangerous attacks as well, that's when you stop, take a moment to do some supporting for your team. For the most part, it's otherwise just standard sword and shield playstyle, but you also pop a might pill every 20 seconds or so if you can. Or if you are low on resources, you just want to save those for things like knockdowns or paralyses, things like that, where everyone gets to do a lot of damage in a short period of time, and even if you just do that, they will still help you out a ton. Overall, I don't think this build is better than just contributing more damage for most situations, unless you are doing a hunt as hard as Savage Omega and you are literally keeping people from carting. The support aspect really does help people out, and especially if you have a steady supply of might pills to funnel into it all, you aren't even really losing that much damage. One final section then is how you would adjust these builds if you were going to fight Savage Omega, as that's the big deal fight right now, and he's a bit more particular than most monsters are in the game. The first is to consider using a weapon slot socket on your Rarity 8 talismans for guard up. You could technically justify even more ranks of guard up, replacing some of your offensive skills in your weapon, but 1 rank is good enough to let you block even the super attacks without losing much offensive potential at all in comparison. Secondly, you should consider using the growth decoration for your 1-slot armor sockets. This gives you a small amount of extra attacks after 10 minutes into the hunt and 20 minutes into the hunt timer. For most monsters, that's a pretty meaningless amount, and most hunts are over before you even get to the 20-minute marker, but Savage Omega hunts regularly do go a fair bit past that mark, so it can actually be relevant as a damage increase for a 1-slot armor socket. That just about does it for today, then, everyone. If you're wondering how to play these builds, they're nothing overly unique, just standard sword and shield gameplay, except the support build that also weaves in some consumable use whenever it's logical to do so. I hope you've all enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy using these builds for yourself in-game as well. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.